All right. Happy lunchtime here on Hump Day on Wednesday here. Hope everybody's doing well. We're here with our special little live event, Nurturing Your Sphere. I'm joined today by Cynthia Castillo from Mango Business Consulting. We're going to dive into some of the best tips and tricks in terms of technology, outreach, ways to really utilize that network that you built, that sphere that you have, to really put your business into overdrive. So with that, welcome, Cynthia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So before we dive in, can you give people just a quick little overview of you, Mango Business Consulting? What your specialty is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my tagline here is take your sleeping CRM and turn it into a gold mine. So, I help you
I
with
like
your systems, I help you with your email marketing, and I help you get that going and running for your business so that you don't have to do as much of the work and it will do more of it for you. So, that's what I do.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, I love that because it's an incredibly powerful tool when used correctly. So,
That's right.
and for people as they're watching, feel free to drop some comments in the chat. If we've got some time at the end, we'll try to answer some questions as we go. But why don't we kick it off really with when you think of a sphere, when you think of a database, a network, um, where is it? Where are people keeping this that are actually able to go and utilize it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easy question is if you have a sphere, which means contacts in your phone, maybe you have somebody's email, maybe you met somebody, put those people in a CRM because like that you have your database in one place. But to take a step back, I think your
Mhm.
sphere is anyone you meet. You're meeting people at the grocery store, you're meeting people at the park, at whatever events you go to, at the golf course, at wherever you may be, whatever hobbies you have. Um, all of those people are part of your sphere and you want to record their information. You want to have their phone number, you want to have their email and be able to
Mhm.
have that in one central area for sure.
Yeah, and for anybody that's read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Gary Keller talks about the Mets. And then that's those are the people that you've met that you either know them, you have their contact information, you've come across them somewhere. Like, it's a great opportunity to get that, to take that meeting, turn it into an opportunity to stay in touch with them, get their contact information, continue to build that relationship versus, hey, how you doing? See you later. And then the
Yeah.
conversation relationship ends.
Yeah, that makes me think of two things. One is being intentional. So with your
Mm,
relationships, just having that intentionality of I am a business owner and I can provide value and taking that one step further. Definitely.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally agree. I totally agree. So, and one of the things you've mentioned in the past too is it's that consistency. So that sphere is great. You're going to meet people and have conversations with them, but there's a big component to this that is consistency and really kind of dedicating that time to it. So when you tell somebody to spend the time and be consistent, what are the sorts of things you're really indicating they should be doing?
Yeah, you know what? Something that I think isn't talked about enough is time management. And so that really goes hand in hand with the systems that you have in your business. And I would love to challenge everyone to just spend 30 minutes, start with 30 minutes a day and say, you know what? I'm going to sit down, I'm going to go inside the system and I'm going to see who I have in there. Maybe that means getting your database in there. Maybe everyone's in your phone and you haven't put it in your database. Maybe you haven't tried going in there. Maybe you're already set up, but you
Mhm.
don't like going in there that often, just set a goal for yourself, a measurable goal, and just put a timer on your phone and say, you know what, 30 minutes, this is my CRM time. I have a little pocket of window of time and I'm going to go in here. So that's like my first challenge that I always give everyone is just take the time. It feels like, oh, it's a waste of time or, oh, I don't have time for that. I'm busy. I'm on the run. But you can definitely, if you want it, if you want your business to grow, if you want it to thrive, you can take that 30 minutes and start with that and see how much it can help you.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea, and that way you break it into bite-sized chunks where it's not so overwhelming.
Yes, exactly.
Um, a question I get a lot, and I figured I'd run it by you, is I coach and train a lot of agents that are newer to the business.
Mhm.
And I get the question a lot of, well, I have their phone number, but not their email, or I have their email and not their phone number. Should I put them in my CRM? And I always look at them and just say, well, obviously, but what, what kind of conversation are you having with somebody who's asking a question like that?
I would just encourage them and say, you know what? If you have someone's name and any type of contact information, it needs to go in your CRM because you can follow up with them later and you can request the missing information. For example, if you got a whole bunch of emails, but you don't have their number, just be like, hey, I just want to reach out. I want to give you a call. When's the best time? And then they're going to give you their phone number
Mhm.
because you don't have it yet. Like there are little ways that you can just gain the information, but the first step is to have them in your database. Otherwise, you won't know. So let's say you did have like 20 people that you only have their number, you met them at the park, let's say, for example. You can put them and tag them and say, I need to get their email, and just make sure to follow up with them. And it's
Mhm.
okay. Provide value first, but get that system in place so that you can then be intentional about the value you're giving, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I hear it a lot from, well, they're in my phone, so I've got their phone number. It's like, great. So put that phone number in there, give them a call, just saying, hey, was I come across interesting information? How could I get it to you? And very,
Yes.
very rarely will they not give you an email because
Yeah.
you don't have to necessarily say, like, I don't have your email. Can you give it to me? Like, ask for it
Right.
in a way where they feel comfortable handing it to you versus making them feel
Yeah.
like you're just trying to gather their info.
Exactly. Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Just feel like, oh, you know what? I just came across this like new statistic or this, I don't know, whatever like lead magnet you want to give them
Hmm.
and just make it interesting. And they'll be like, oh, sure. Every time I've asked someone for their information, no one has said no. Like, I think
Yeah.
people are very like, oh, sure, you're going to help me with something. Yeah, of course.
Yep.
So
Yeah, if anything, maybe you'll get the whole question of, well, you're not gonna send me spam, are you? No, no, I won't send you spam, but then you really have to not send them spam.
yeah, that's very
Don't send them the canned junk that you might otherwise send. Like,
true.
find good stuff, as you call it, a lead magnet. I love to send all kinds of stuff. We'll get into that here a little bit later in the conversation because there's lots of ways to engage with that sphere and that database in a way where they want to get the information from you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so CRM. So for those that maybe don't have a lot of familiarity with CRM, or I hope they don't not use one, but um, what are some of the CRMs that you really like that have the tools that agents actually need?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this question, it's kind of a big one, but
It is.
I'll put it in a couple of buckets.
Okay.
So I have the bucket for the agent who's just starting out and they don't have a lot of funds, or maybe you've been in the business, but it hasn't been super great for you. And you're just really, really small budget and you just need something. So that's the first group where it's just a basic CRM, maybe like Realty Juggler, Follow Up Boss, something like that, where it's just a database where you can keep track of everybody. So
Yep.
that's like the lowest tier. And then the one that I really like people to be in, if they can, is somewhere like Chime, Follow Up Boss. I know you guys have a CRM,
Mhm.
and that is exactly where you need to be. So that has the marketing component, it has the database component, and it just makes it a platform where everything is all together, so that you can manage your business in one place. So that's, and with the website, IDX
Mhm.
website, that's super important too. Um, that's where I want people to be in. And then if you want to do a lot of ad spend and you have a brokerage or maybe you have a large team, maybe something like Sync or like Boomtown, that level,
Yep.
if you want. But I don't think it's really necessary, honestly. I really like to stay in that sweet middle spot.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's good that you distinguish, the levels to them because I see the questions on the Facebook groups all the time. What CRM should I get? And everybody's response is, well, what are you trying to do with it? Because there's
Exactly.
very different levels. That
Mhm.
base level is going to give you, a place to store information, make notes, and some basic automation, which is a great starting point. You don't need to
Yeah,
go crazy to start off.
that's right.
You just need to get used to using it.
Something is definitely better than nothing. And I would argue
Right.
that all CRMs are pretty similar across the board. They all have similar buttons, they all have similar
Sure.
features. It just depends on what you're trying to do and making sure you use it. Just like I've seen a lot of responses, the best one, it's the one that you use.
Yeah.
And I would argue that that is true.
I
So,
love that answer. It's if you're going to work off of a Google sheet, then at least it's something. But make sure whatever you do, you're using it.
yeah,
So good. All right. Um, so now we've established what the CRM is. Ways to maybe put some names in there. But one of the things that I know early on in my career I was not very good at is actually keeping track of the people that are going into that CRM. I would just dump names in there. I'd have no idea where they came from, why they were in there.
oh my God.
Um, it was fun to I was just literally I did what they tell you to do, which is fill it with as many names and contact information as you can. But then you sit
Yeah.
back and go, where'd they come from? Like I don't know where that came from. So what are some of the best practices and tips you give people on actually once they get names in there, organizing those names?
Yeah, I think that is huge, and that's something that people don't really like to do. I think that's one of the least enjoyable things.
Mm,
But once you have it set up, then it's a beautiful machine. So
yeah.
I think identifying what kind of audiences you have inside your CRM is super important. I think a lot of people, their go to is just cold lead, warm lead, hot lead, under contract, and past client. Like those are like the solid pieces of the
Mhm.
transactional part. But I always like to talk to my clients and say, "Hey, look, these aren't the only buckets that you can have inside your CRM. You can do everything from where you found them, what things you have in common, because it's all about relationships, right? And so if you're going
Yep.
to be sending content to somebody, you want to make sure it's something that they want to see. And so if you don't know where they came from, you don't know what they like, you don't know what they care about, you don't know what their family life is like. Like, for example, a couple who is about to retire is going to want different content than a new family that's
Sure.
growing. That those are two total different sides of the spectrum, as well as different likes, different hobbies. So if you met someone at the golf course, like they're going to be a different type of people than the people you meet at the supermarket. Like I don't know, but you have to see where all your leads are coming from, and you need to organize them in that way so that you can give them the best content, the best experience. And just really give them what they need. And so I would argue that, take a step back and look at the people and see where they're coming from.
Yeah, no, that's great because I will say I've used Sync in the past, I've used Brivity in the past, and they tend to
Mhm.
want to categorize people by where they are in the process, which
Yeah.
I think by default, a lot of these databases want to do transaction management also for you to a certain extent, so that's kind of baked in. Um, but I found that difficult for me because in many cases, my network, some people in my network are in the middle of a transaction, many are not.
Hmm.
So for
That's
me, it was
right.
trying to remember like where they came from, what are their interests, as you pointed out. How do you talk to these different people
Hmm.
without keeping track of their interests? And one of the things I came across was a combination of tags
Oh, yeah.
and notes. So when you're talking to an agent who's working through their CRM, how do you describe things like tags and notes and the best way to use those?
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head right there is that you see the biggest groups that you have and you create a tag for it. So, one example for one of my clients that I did was talking about veterans.
Hmm,
And because she had a whole bunch of military clients, we did create tags for those coming from that lead source, and they were just listed as veterans. So everything was curated to them, and they were able to receive more resources and more specific content because she knew where they were coming from. She knew their needs. She was very familiar with that space, and that's who she served. And so it made it much better experience for them
hmm.
because they got what they needed. So that's like one example of an easy way. Um, but I would just make a list, start making lists and say, where am I meeting people and where are they coming from? And the top ones, like the top five, just make tags. And you can make as many tags as you want, honestly. And I would argue that you can kind of like stack them as well. So you can get as granular as you want.
Hmm.
But just starting with a basic, maybe like five, and then go from there. It doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
Start somewhere.
No, exactly, and that's the thing. It's just it starts somewhere. You're never going to get there if you don't get started. And for me, where I'm a pretty big networking person. I'm not a cold caller and things like that. I like to
Yeah.
network, and I have tags based on it's a variety of things. It's everywhere from investor type clients, commercial type clients,
Hmm.
to things like people I met at the golf course, people I met at a networking event, because then I know I can go back to hey, I had a great time talking to you at XYZ event because
Yes.
now I remember where I found them. Um, and
Yeah.
one thing I do that has been really helpful for me is getting into those notes and trying to jot down anything I can remember from our conversation. So when I make that follow up call to see how things are, I've got information I can rely on to say, oh, how did that vacation go in Florida you were talking about taking? Or, I heard, I know you've got kids, be ready for the summer. Like finding some point of contact where I have a reason to talk to them and not sound like a completely cold stranger.
Yeah, and I would argue that every time you have a conversation with someone, as soon as you can, put those notes in your
Mm.
CRM because like you're going to forget. I mean, I don't remember what I did yesterday. I don't know about you. I could look at my calendar and be like, okay, who did I meet with? But I'm not
Yeah.
actively thinking back. I'm
Yeah.
not going to remember the name of someone's dog that I spoke
Yeah.
to 2 weeks ago. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, but those are little things that make people feel like you care about them because you're being intentional with what you record about them. And so if you have a conversation, by the end of the day, try and get that in there. So you can be like, oh yeah, this is what they like to do, or this is what I learned about them. And like that, you can bring that up later. And also I've found other realtors have recorded things like that also for their gifts. Cause I know everyone's like, oh, what
Mm,
do I get for a closing gift? What do I give?
that's a good one.
And if you're paying attention to what they're talking about, they're going to tell you what they care about. And so that's something else too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I honestly never even considered that angle of that's also a great archive to go back into to find out what's important to them. And
Mhm.
whether it's a charitable cause or they've got a certain interest or, a
Yeah.
certain hobby, it's always good to have that. And we always advise agents, when you're having these initial conversations, focus on that Ford script, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Those are
Mm.
the four things people love to talk about. And if you can get them talking about that, you're going to learn a lot about them that down the road will make it easier to move that relationship forward because you're showing that you care about them. You're taking the time to get to know them and learn about what's important to them. And
Mhm.
then in the future, those conversations are a lot easier because now they know that you've built some rapport with them. You've actually taken the time to get to know them, and you're not just continuing to go at them wondering when they're going to buy or sell, or as Johnny Moe calls it, the exchange.
Yeah, right. No, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
No, that's good stuff. So, all right. So let's, one of the words you've used to talk about your sphere before is community. Talking about this as kind of your personal community, your audience. Whatever word you want to use for it. And that's one of the things that we have very much in common is that we very much treat our network as a community, and it's our group, it's our tribe, it's our insert whatever word makes the most sense for you there.
Mhm.
But when you talk about personal community, what does that mean to you?
What a big question.
I know.
Um, I I think it's about providing value to the people that you are contacting with. I think that everyone's trying to sell something,
Hmm.
and if you're a salesperson just saying like, "You wanna buy a house? You wanna buy a house? You wanna sell your house? You wanna buy your house?" There's no connection there, and
Yep.
especially in real estate, there are so many realtors. I saw a statistic the other day that there are, like, twice as many realtors as there are homes on the market right
Yep.
now. Like, that's
That is a true stat.
yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And so you have to stand out. You have to show what you can give to your community. And I think by creating these different audiences and giving good advice or giving curated advice to those different communities, you show that you're there for them, you're showing up for them consistently, you're being in front of them, you're staying top of mind. And by doing all these things, that's building community. It's building relationships because you keep showing up, you keep thinking about them and their needs and providing for that. And from there, they're going to trust you. They're going to like you. They're going to want to work with you because you're showing that you're reliable. You're showing that you understand them. You're showing that you're there for them. And I think that's what people want the most. They want to make sure that they're taken care of and that, you're going to do your best for them. And I think just that consistency, that consistent being in front of them and showing them what they need, that's where it's at.
Yeah, and I love what you just said. You mentioned, the different audiences and curated content. So what that tells me is that you're not just sending everybody the same stuff.
That's right.
You're putting some thought into what you're sending them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
And
I'm the
that's I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say that goes back to cutting out the fluff.
Yep.
There's so many like generic newsletters that go out, and I
Mhm.
receive them. Do I look at them every time? Not really, because I already know what it is. I know it's a generic like market update. This is what's going on this week, which is helpful. It's not bad. It's a
Sure.
good place to start. But I want more than that, and I'm sure other people want more than that too.
Yeah, I would agree, and we encourage the agents we work with and our partners with Explore My Town to use that newsletter as a way to actually communicate what's going on in the community, not just what you're doing. People
Mhm.
love a sneak peek behind the scenes of real estate because people are always fascinated by it, hence why HGTV is so watched.
Yeah, that's
But at the
right.
same time, they also wanna know about what's going on in the community. What events are coming up? What new businesses are opening up? Where's the best place to get a cup of coffee? Like,
Mhm.
this is your chance to almost become the town newspaper in a sense. Don't waste that on spammy sales stuff with kind of chintzy little calls to action. Like, use that as a way to really educate, inform, and entertain people and show them what's going on in the marketplace because to your point, then they actually want to open it. You've given them a reason to wanna interact with it.
Mhm.
And now that audience of yours feels like they're getting some value from you in the form of all this news and information.
Yeah, that's right. I totally agree. And I think that goes to our topic of personal branding that I know we
Mm,
spoke about before,
yep.
and just showing up as your authentic self and showing people who you are. Because anyone can go on Google and say, please give me a template of 10 emails to send to
Oh,
new
sure.
leads, right?
Yep.
Anyone can do that, but there's no value in there. It's just empty. It's like a shell, right? And you need to fill that with yourself, with your personality. And I love working with people who are funny, who have been in the business for a long time
Mhm.
or not a long time, but who just have their own take on things. I think it's so fun to just showcase that to your audience and just show them. what's it like to work with you? What's it like to talk with you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they wanna know you're a real human being, that you've got
Yeah.
some you've got some emotions, you've got a life, like, you've got a personality to you, and,
Yeah.
because ultimately, they're gonna work with people that they kind of, vibe with or connect with or feel comfortable with, and the more you display your personality, the more they get to know you, and the more likely they are to figure out if you're a fit or not.
Yeah, and I love talking about how, if you're on social media, on Instagram Reels or Facebook or TikTok or whatever, and you keep scrolling and you watch the same creator and you
Mhm.
watch them over and over again. So then over time, you feel like you know them already, even though you
Totally.
have no idea who they are.
Yep.
But it's kind of the same thing, with your email campaigns, with your drip campaigns. And honestly, like getting everything out there on social media and then getting everyone funneled into your email campaigns, that is just the consistent touches and the consistency of them seeing you and you showing up for them. They're going to feel like they know you too. Even if you haven't built that huge relationship like a one-on-one, they're going to still get to know you and they're going to like you too.
Yeah, and I love that point. I was having this conversation with Johnny Mo months ago. Just it's funny how when you see somebody online a bunch, you start to like connect with them and feel like you know them. And he refers to it as the parasocial relationship, where they begin to develop that relationship with you. You don't even know they're doing it,
Hmm.
but because they're interacting, engaging, following you, like they're building up this relationship where like now if they saw you in public, they walk right up being, oh, like, oh, hey, great to meet you, Cynthia. I love your videos.
Yeah.
I never understood what that was until I started having it happen to me. And then it was like, oh, okay. Like I was at a networking event in January. And I had several people walk up and introduce themselves because they saw my stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Like that's the first time that's happened to me. But it was awesome because, rather than having to go and, you know, go work the room and try to meet people, like they were approaching me because they'd already seen stuff I made. And that
Hmm.
completely changed the dynamic for me of understanding the power of that relationship, but also the power of continuing to be in front of people in a way where they wanna be in front of you. They want to engage with you, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I love that too. I do not enjoy cold calling, cold DMing, any of that. I would
Mhm.
much rather attract everyone and just be able to help
Yeah.
them with whatever I can until, like, whether they need my services or not. I want to be that go to. I want to be the marketing girl. I want to be, what Cynthia, what should I do? I want to be able to have answers for them. And for sure, like attraction is much easier. It's much more enjoyable too,
Mhm.
instead of just trying to like fight your way to the top, kind of,
Yeah, I mean, the hand-to-hand combat of cold contacts and chasing people is to me, just isn't a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
don't enjoy that part of the business. I enjoy meeting people, getting to know them, building a relationship, and then finding ways to help them.
Hmm.
It's easier to do that when you're meeting in a slightly warmer environment than when you're chasing after them to the point where they're kinda like, "No, no, I'm good, like, leave me alone. I'm done with you, guy, like, stop calling me."
Yeah. Definitely.
It's just a much different relationship there.
Mhm. That makes
So
them feel better too.
yeah. So given what we just talked about, I hear a lot of agents say, "Well, I'm taking care of my database." And okay, what does that look like? Well, I've got them on all these auto plans and drip campaigns. And I kind of go, okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the auto plans, smart plans, drip campaigns, whatever you call them? What are your thoughts on those as a database tool?
I'm gonna chop that into thirds. So
Perfect.
one third is if you have smart plans downloaded from your KW portal or whatever, whatever brokerage you're from, and
Yep.
you just download it and you put it in your CRM, guess what? That's a lot better than nothing because some people don't even do that.
Sure.
So you're the first step in, you're doing something, which is great.
Yep.
Always do something instead of nothing for sure. So that's like the first tier. But then what I do with my clients, which is so much fun, is taking those and customizing it so that it is your voice. It is
Mm,
you coming out and you speaking to your clients in your area, and you know better than anyone else what they need and when they need to hear it. And so I go through that process with my clients to make sure that it isn't just a smart plan that's downloaded. You know what I mean? It's going to be different for everybody.
sure.
And it makes it more interesting too, because yeah, you've all seen like even lenders too, where they
Hmm.
have the sequence of like, now you need to do this, now you need to do that.
Hmm.
This is the next step, whatever, which is fine. It's important. Everyone needs information, but um, you can make it better. And I challenge everyone to make it better. If you can go in there and make it like own it, please do that. So that's the next step. And then after
Okay.
that, that's like the golden spot, which I think is also so much fun. And that is half of it being the second tier, which is, your custom templates for things that people need to know as part of the transaction or part of getting to know you,
Hmm.
having those core things, but then also keeping up with the market, keeping up with the community, keeping up with what's happening, because everyone wants to know what's happening today. They don't want to know what happened 2 years ago. They want to know, okay, what's happening tomorrow? What's happening
Mhm.
next week? So if you're, it takes a little bit more work, obviously. It's a little bit more time, but it's definitely worth it for you and your audience and building those relationships to go ahead and show them what's happening now. And that's like the best next step.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, something is better than nothing. So
Yeah.
if you got the canned emails, at least you're doing something. But
Mhm.
I love the idea of continuing going up those levels of customization, because what I find is that all these CRMs come with canned templates. You can just
Yeah.
start the plan and it'll go do it for you. And
Mhm.
so it's doing something. But generally what I find with those is that the open rates are really low.
That's true.
Um,
Unsubscribes are high too.
exactly. Unsubscribes are high because of that. They get into it, realize it's junk, because ultimately what the person feels like when they get that is that they feel like that's not a genuine message from you. Like they feel like
That's
that is a canned message. They feel like it's spammy. Like, they want to engage with you, not a robot that's just, like, sending information. So, I love
mhm.
the idea of getting into more customization, but even further than that is you've talked about, alternating that communication. So, maybe they do get a canned email, but in the meantime, they're getting other sorts of things, and you mentioned market updates, and what are other things that you're telling clients they should be thinking about sending on a consistent basis?
Mhm. I think it depends on what their audience groups look like for sure.
Mm, true.
But in general, definitely community events are number one. Also, I love what you were talking about with, what's the best restaurant to eat at. Also, different experiences. People love stories. And I have
Yes.
found huge success about, this last week I had this transaction and there was this, that, and the other thing, but we were able to overcome it or whatever it may be. Like it could be a story of a past client that isn't so recent, so they don't feel like, oh, they're talking about me.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But you can talk about what you see going on in the business too, like from your perspective, because I think clients a lot of the time you might hear that like, oh, why do I need a realtor? All you guys do is sign a contract and give me the keys. Like you don't do anything, but show them your value by giving them little stories, little tidbits about, what you were able to do. Maybe you negotiated something really well, or maybe you were able to find the perfect home for somebody or it's whatever it may be, but infuse everything with stories because at the end of the day, we're all storytellers. We all have a story to tell and people want to read it. People want to hear it. So
Yep. So what are your thoughts on, sending videos versus sending, maybe blog style emails versus sending just kind of quick textual update type emails? Do you feel like there's a place for all of them? Do you prefer one over the other?
definitely a place for all of them. I love a combination of that. And I think honestly, my favorite place, not my favorite. So one place that I think video is really important is in the process. Those
Mm,
emails that you said were just the generic like update emails. If those are turned into video, that removes that
mm.
like impersonal part about it. Because even though it's information they need to have, if it's in a video, they're going to connect with you way better. And they're going to be like, oh, wow, she took the time out of her day, or he took the time out of his day to, send this to me.
Yep.
Like it feels more personal. And I really like to have that for that piece. But also video, of course, video is the best because it's the closest to having an actual conversation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we've got a meeting this afternoon with all of our Explore My Town partners, and we're talking about, using video in their business
Yeah.
many other ways. And one of the things we're going to talk about is using it to help people understand the process, because as an agent, you sit down at the beginning of the process and say, okay, we're going to go under contract and inspections, blah, blah, blah. Like you walk them through the process. But, we all know that the client gets so focused on the house search and the offer and all this stuff, they kind of forget about the next steps. But
Yeah.
if you can send them an email the day after they go under contract saying, congratulations, you're under contract. Don't forget, we're going to be doing an inspection next. And
Hmm.
like, even if that's a canned video you've recorded once and you send out a million times, or if it's personalized, just the fact that you're sending that reminder and building that into what you do with them for client services gives them a much better experience and
Yeah.
really helps you stand out, because most of the times they're getting like a text message from their agent, congrats, you're under contract, schedule the inspection. Well,
Hmm.
that doesn't really celebrate the fact they hit this big milestone, but like a video where you're excited for them really does make them feel different about it.
Yeah, that's definitely next step. I also think I've met with a lot of people who aren't comfortable with video yet, and I
Sure.
tell them, start small, but at least have that text-based one.
Mhm.
And then once you're ready to do video, we can replace it with video. We can always update it. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's great advice. If you're not ready to get there yet, then yeah, start with a text-based email.
Mhm.
It's simple, it's a reminder, still makes them feel good, and then over time you can build that up to having more, to going into video. But yeah, I would rather see somebody do the text-based thing versus nothing because they're afraid of video.
Right. I agree.
Totally true. Totally true. All right, before we move on from that area, um, you mentioned even before we went on here, just the power of email marketing and the fact that a lot of people feel like email marketing is not a thing anymore. But everything proves to me and to you that email marketing is still a very valid way to get in touch with people. So can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on email marketing as a whole and just the power of it?
Sure. I think email marketing is one of those like old but good things.
Mm,
Technology is always changing. Things are always updating. I feel like social media is the new biggest thing that you want to be
yeah.
branded everywhere. You want to be creating videos every day or creating posts every day. And while that is very important, I would say all of that goes down to a funnel
Mhm.
to go to your email list because you own that. I was talking to someone the other day. They said your database is your data bank, and that is so
Yeah.
true. And also, what like your net worth is the people that
Yeah.
your net
Your
worth is
net worth
everything.
is your network.
Yeah, there we
Yep.
go. So you got it. So I think that boils down to who do you know
Mhm.
and where do they live? They're going to live in your database. And so it is so, so, so powerful to have people's contact information. Like the other day, Messenger on Facebook wasn't working. And it
Hmm.
always gives me a heart attack whenever that's happening because a lot of my farming is done on Facebook. I'm
Yeah.
connecting with people every day on Facebook. So if it's not working, I'm just like, what do you mean you're not working today?
Yep.
you But if you have your database backed up somewhere, you at least have that. So let's say it was to crash, God forbid, I don't want that to happen. But let's say it did. You can still operate your business because you have those contacts. And I don't know. I just feel like how can you not just own it if you have the capability to own it? Anyone can have their database somewhere and just keep that.
Yep.
So that's I think I went on the tangent, but I think that's
No, that's good because I feel the same way.
yeah.
I'm very active on Facebook, so I'm part of a lot of groups. And I like to network that way, and that's great. But at the end of the day, Facebook is all social media is very noisy.
Hmm.
There's a ton of stuff going on. There's a bazillion ads being thrown at people. There's groups, there's pages, there's friends. There's this stream of stuff coming at them. And we know statistically that, less than 10% of people that, follow you and are friends with you actually see your stuff.
That's
So
true.
if you're thinking that Facebook's a great way to kind of blast messaging out to your whole network, you're wrong because very few of them will actually see it. Whereas at least with an email that it's hitting their inbox. Whether they read it or not, it's up to them. But
Hmm.
if nothing else, they saw your name in their inbox, and that alone is valuable. Just the fact they continue to get reminded that you're out there.
I think email is equivalent to text messages
Yeah.
because it's literally going into their inbox. So the same way you can send a text message, you can send an email, and it's going to arrive in their inbox. They're going to see it. Like maybe on Facebook, if you tag them, they'll see it. But like you said, it's a very small percentage of people who see what you're posting. So that is true.
Yeah. I see a lot of people get frustrated thinking that Facebook's going to bring them all this activity and they post something out there and get 7 likes and 2 comments. They're like, well, what happened to everybody else?
Yeah.
Well, only so many people get to see it.
Unless you do paid ads, but that's a whole other animal for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we got a little bit of time here left. I want to dive into a point you make, which is that the systems are key. Actually, and systems not just being like the technology of a CRM, but really the system it's how you operate. It's the technology you
Mhm.
use. It's the way you do things. So let's talk a little bit about systems. So you've got audiences identified. You've got your groups. You've got your plan to communicate to them. When you look at systems, what is that next step in progression?
Yeah. So once you have your audiences, I would say to do that two-part piece of, the core content that,
Mhm.
everyone needs to know when they're in a transaction, and then making a plan for those additional emails and that additional connection that you want to send out. Having a plan at the beginning, like, first of all, that's amazing because I feel like a lot of people are very reactive in this business. It's very much
Yes.
like chasing the next best thing, chasing the next deal. Maybe you're worried about your bills, maybe you're not, but it's always a hustle. It's always answering your phone,
Yep.
like running out, showing things, whatever. But it's a very like active, always running type business, I feel like. And I would like to invite you to just take a step back one day. Just take like an hour and go, what's working in my business? What do I need to automate that I'm doing every single time? I like to tell my clients, if you're going to write it more than once, if you're writing it over and over again, make it into a template. Save yourself the 10, 15 minutes that you're typing and trying to remember everything and have that as part of your systems. So that's
Yep.
one thing. But also like take time to decide what you're going to create. Because at the end of the day, you're creating things, you want people to be engaged with it, you want them to connect with you. But you need time, you need space, you need a chance to breathe for a second to be able to do that. And I think structuring your time is really, really helpful for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the important part about systems is that I think when we talk about having a system, people think, well, what technology do you use? But really, the system is how you operate. It's
That's right.
it's when you do certain things, how you do certain things, where you do certain things, and your system can literally be a yellow legal pad is how you keep track of everything. Like,
Hmm.
but that's your system. You've got to have a way in which you operate where you know that you can capture everything, get everything done, and to your point, maintain that consistency and continue to create the right things and communicate in a audience. This is your community. This is your opportunity to share what you think is important to them. You don't want
Hmm.
to miss that opportunity because you're disorganized and can't figure out how to communicate.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I think systems is part of strategy too. So, what ways
Mm,
are you intentionally showing up in your business? Is it only reactive? If it is, maybe you need to take a moment and just see, what am I actually doing here? What does my day to day look like?
yep.
Do I take time for working in my database? Do I take time for making sure that I don't miss the leads that I'm paying for? Because I feel like that was one of the biggest things for me in opening up Mango Business Consulting is people missing leads because they weren't able to follow up with them because they didn't have the system in place. So just knowing
Oh
what
yeah.
you're supposed to do and when is super important.
Yeah. I always advise people that you need a system when you are consistently forgetting to do things that you know are really important.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when you're like, "Oh, I gotta make sure I send out that newsletter," and it doesn't get sent out, doesn't get sent out, doesn't get sent out, or I need to remember to, write this or do that or share this or update that. If you're continually not getting things done or not remembering things, then clearly whatever you're doing, whatever system you're working with, isn't working for you.
Yeah.
It's gotta be something that actually keeps you on track.
Hmm. I agree. And also, I challenge new agents to make
Mm,
a system before that, before you get to that point.
yes.
It's never too early to get all of your systems set up. So get them set up whenever you can, as soon as you can.
Yeah, because the amazing thing about real estate is that, you are your own boss and you have the freedom. But that
Hmm.
also means you've got the freedom to do nothing
That's
and,
true.
well, have your business struggle. So,
Yeah.
just like a manager would be telling you what to do, you've got to do that now for yourself.
Hmm.
And you got to find out how you work best.
Yeah.
So, we talked a lot about, newsletters and videos and creating and a lot of people go, "Well, I don't have time to create." Like there's when am I going to find time to do that? And I always view that creation process and I also view communicating with your database and your sphere as a lead generation. And I think a lot of people don't think of it that way. But
Hmm.
really, if you're doing this right, you should be getting your community to engage with you, and from there, opportunities will come from it.
That's
Do
right.
you do you give clients advice or guidance on how they schedule that in, what they should expect in terms of scheduling those things out, and how much of their time should they be spending on the database?
Yeah, when I do work with my clients, I do ask them, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And what has worked for you in the past? And where do you need to go? So I am not a coach, right? I'm not really a real estate coach,
Mhm.
but I do help you with your CRM and with your systems. And so a lot of that has to do with how you operate and what you're doing. And so if they're telling me, oh, I have all these leads, I haven't followed up with them, I am busy with this deal and that deal that's on fire, but whatever the case may be, and I tell them, okay, well, let's try and do this piece first and then the next. And I just break it down into bite sized pieces because a lot of time I find a lot of resistance when it comes
Mhm.
to working inside the system. And I'm like, look, it doesn't have to be hard, but creating new habits does take time. So let's do this piece first. And I check in with them and I say, hey, did you do that? Did you have time for it? Okay, let's do that before our next session. And that accountability piece, I think, has been huge and helpful with my clients so that they make sure that they get in there and they try it themselves and they work their way up to where they need to be the best person that they want to be.
Yeah. So do you is there like a starting point you recommend they be at? Like never spend less than this much time, or is it really person specific?
It's really person specific.
Okay,
I go through it. It's custom. So
gotcha. Um, and one thing that I do, and for those people that are maybe have been in the business a little bit longer, have a bigger network, or maybe even are, building a team or even their own brokerage,
Mhm.
I use my CRM for everybody. So it's clients and past clients, it's referral partners, it's my inner
Yeah.
circle of vendors, it's other agents that I've had conversations with that maybe there's an opportunity to work together in the future. Like
Mhm.
I keep a lot of people in my database that are not necessarily just real estate clients, and that's why the organization for me is so big. So I don't start sending newsletters to fellow agents because that would be weird.
Right.
Um, do you recommend to other people that they keep people like that in their database, or do you recommend that they try to keep those worlds separately until they really have that system in place?
No way. Absolutely. Have every single person that you know in your
Okay.
database. If you know them, have them in there. And that's why the custom tags are so important. Like, one really small example of how powerful it can be is I was talking with one of my clients, and she said, every time I need a handyman, I have to go through my phone and
Oh
type
yeah.
this message to like 10 people to see who's available for tomorrow because it's an emergency. And I was like, okay, well, how can we make this easier for you so that you don't have to be doing that? So what we did is we just got all of them in her database, we tagged them all as handyman, and then now she can just search up handyman tag and they all pop up. And there's a populated message that says, hey, I need to talk with you. I have something that needs to be done for tomorrow. Let me know if you're available. And then just sends it out. 2 clicks. How hard is that? So, no, for sure, you need to have everyone in your database. If you have realtor contacts and you're a realtor, have them in there. You never know if you might need somebody or if they might send something to you. If you have vendors, they're super important too. You want to have that relationship and building with them as well. And I think that's another like overlooked super important thing.
Yeah. No, and I love the example of the handyman because in my past life we had a preferred vendor list, and it
Yeah,
was a Google sheet.
right.
So a client would say, "Hey, I need a roofer." It's like, "Okay, let me go check the list." And it's like, "Okay, I'm not there's all these people on it, and you gotta go down the listing and figure out, okay, well, what area does he cover? Oh, is
Hmm.
he, nothing's been updated for like a year or 2. You're not sure what areas they cover.
That's right.
Are they even still in the business?"
Yeah.
And the problem is, like, we create these preferred vendor lists one time and leave it out there.
Hmm.
It never gets updated. Whereas the CRM gets updated as you're talking to people and learning things, like you're making your notes, you're changing your tags, like you're learning all these things as you go.
Hmm.
We end up with all these stale vendors on this list that we're trying to refer to that aren't even good matches anymore because we've decided to make that live separately. And now our clients are like, "Well, you gave me 3 names and I can't get a hold of anybody."
Oh
Oops.
no.
Like, sorry about that. Those are bad
Yeah.
names.
Yeah. No, that's a very good example too.
Yeah, I like that. So, one of the things too we've talked about is, kind of showcasing where you live, sharing that with your audiences. And you made a comment of, be where your ideal clients would be.
Mhm.
So think about who that ideal client is and be where they want to be. So when you're talking to an agent about trying to get into a certain segment of the market or go deeper in a certain area, what are the things you tell them they should be doing to try to make sure they're getting in front of that client?
Sure. I don't talk about getting leads as much as what to do with them.
Mhm.
But when it does come up, I have found personally, and I don't know, I've been around the business for a long time, and I think it's really easy to connect with people if you're being genuine. And so if you see something like if there is a local event and you know that people are going to be there, and you know that the key people of like I don't know, let's say the Chamber of Commerce, for example. If you those people are important to you and you want to be there, you're gonna look at their website, you're gonna see what events they're having, and you're gonna be there because you know that they're gonna be there. You can introduce yourself and just be like, hey, by the way, whatever the first step is, definitely you can take it if you want it. So I think that now information is super accessible. So people are always posting about their events. They're, saying, oh, share this with everybody. So if they're saying to share it, you're definitely welcome. And honestly, it's just about owning your space and owning your community and just being where you need to be, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And one of the tips of what I do is that I use social media to kind of try to gauge trends. So if the people that I know that live in a particular area are all lately going to this restaurant, then I want to
Mhm.
go to that restaurant and do a video. I want to be seen there
Yeah.
because clearly it's popular,
Look
but
at the
now it also
check-in.
shows familiarity and something we have in common.
Definitely.
All right, so we're kind of heading here to the 45-minute mark. Got to start to wrap up. Before we do that, any other points, any other best practices or tips you want to share?
Hmm, I just like to share that CRM is a humongously powerful tool if you're using it correctly. And one thing that keeps coming up is it didn't work for me. I tried CRM already, it doesn't work. That's not true. It's
Yep.
simply statistically not true that it doesn't work. It's because you need a strategy. And I think that is just one of the hugest things that I want everyone to know is that you can use it. It's not hard. You're able to learn it. And with the right strategy, it can be immensely powerful for your business.
No, it's a great point. It really is, and I can attest to the fact that 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 CRM database, whatever you want to call it, it's been huge for me. Again, I'm a networker. I like to meet a lot of people, stay in touch with a lot of people. It keeps me organized. It
Mhm.
makes sure I stay in front of people. Continues to nurture those relationships, and also reminds me to continues to remind me to take the time to go and do that, because otherwise we all just kind of get busy on stuff and don't come back to it. So when you use it right, to your point, and use it consistently, it is incredibly powerful.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I always like to leave people with something, impactful at the end of one of these, and I didn't prep you for this question, but I'll give it to you anyways.
All right.
Um, so what is the one thing somebody can do today, um, to improve or enhance their ability to nurture that sphere?
I would take some time and think about who your audience is. In the same way that we like to give gifts of
Mm,
what we like, if my go-to, if I just think of like if I need to give somebody something, maybe a box of chocolates, because guess what? I love that. And
mhm,
maybe that's something that's kind of common, or maybe coffee. I love coffee too, but not
yeah,
everyone drinks coffee. What if I give coffee to someone who drinks whiskey and they never drink coffee? They only drink water in the morning. Like it's not going to connect. And so think about who you're around. Think about the groups of people that you've been around. Write them down, maybe like a list of five, and just think about life from their lens so that you can make
mm.
content for them. Because if you're always thinking about me, it's not going to resonate with them because it's about you. But if you make it about them, then they're more likely to trust you, they're more likely to like you, and they're going to feel heard. So just start with that, I think.
I love that. Yeah, really, really dive into who are the people you deal with, you are around, and make sure that whatever you're doing is tailored to that audience. Because you're right, we oftentimes default to what we like, what we think, what we believe, and
Mhm.
don't necessarily go deeper on understanding what that community is looking for.
Yeah. So that may take some time, but
Yeah.
take like half an hour to just think about it for a second. I think it would be beneficial for them. So,
Well, exactly. Even just putting some time into it puts you farther ahead than you would have been otherwise.
one step at a
So
time.
that's awesome. All right, Cynthia. So if people want to learn more about you, talk more about CRMs, learn more about Mango Business Consulting, what are the best ways for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook all day, every day. So if you find me on there, I will definitely respond. So that's the biggest pace. But if not, you can visit my website, mangobizc.com/calendly, and you can set up an appointment with me. It's free. I'd love to talk more, whether it's about marketing, CRM, maybe you just want some ideas. I'm open to that too. So that's how they can connect.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll certainly be having you on again here in the future to talk more about CRMs, continue to bring people tips and best practices, and help people really unlock the value of that CRM, make sure they're using it in the right ways, make sure they're generating the opportunities from it that they should, so we can all enjoy that benefit.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for the time today, Cynthia. That was super impactful, and I hope people were able to take some things away. And we'll see you again soon.